It's Tuesday, June 20. In the headlines in local news, tourism operators invited to 2023 Licensing Expo. In business news, Jamaica outperforms IMF targets. Regionally, strengthening Caribbean-African ties through transportation. Internationally, Germany-China relations. Ministers from both countries meet in Berlin. And in sports, the ICC World Cup qualifiers. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The Montego Bay Revenue Service Center will reopen for limited business between 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. today, June 20, until further notice. Tax Administration of Jamaica, TAJ, in a press release says this is due to a malfunctioning air conditioning system which has significantly affected the authority's customer service delivery at the location since last week. These limited services include collections, cashiering services, renewal of driver's license, substitute driver's license, provisional driver's license, new driver's license, collection of driver's license, purchasing of green and red plates, property tax query, stamp duty processing. The press release says, quote, during this time, persons may opt to visit the Falmouth, Lucy, Darlaston, or St. Anne's Bay tax offices to conduct their usual transactions, end quote. Taxpayers are also reminded that several transactions may be conducted using TAJ's tax portal at www.jamaicatax.gov.jm. These include filing, payment, property tax querying, traffic ticket, and certificate of fitness fee payment. Tourism operators are being urged to take advantage of the 2023 Licensing Expo to submit and renew applications for Jamaica Tourist Board licenses. The Tourism Product Development Company says the expo, which entails all 6 resort areas, aims to streamline and highlight the licensing process and benefits available to licensed entities. So far, events have been held in Ocho Rios and Portland. The others are scheduled for the Breads Sports Complex, St. Elizabeth, on June 22, the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in New Kingston on June 29, Rayon Hotel in Negril on July 18, and the Montego Bay Convention Center in St. James on July 20. Activities will begin at 9 a.m. each day. The TPDCO is the central agency mandated by the government of Jamaica to facilitate the maintenance, development, and enhancement of the tourism product. It is also charged on behalf of the Jamaica Tourist Board to process applications for entities that require a JTB license. The Minister of Education, Fayval Williams, says providing an environment of learning and emotional development is significant.
There's been a focus on creating more brain builder centers so that children who are less than 3 years old can be in an environment that encourages brain development.
She says brain development happens with everyday experiences and the care that our children receive in the early years.
So by providing that environment for them in their early years, and engaging with them through reading, talking, and playtime, we will have a great influence on their early development. So where we stand now, and from where you can measure us going forward, the number of brain builder centers has increased to 127, with 30 additional centers targeted for this fiscal year.
She says 7 infant departments have been added to existing departments, along with 6 standalone infant schools.
And we are ramping up our training, our trained teacher program in early childhood institutions to help us to to get to that ratio of 1 trained practitioner to 10 students.
The public transport sector will become a system that is people-centered, safe and reliable. That is the vision of the government and the Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, Daryl Vaz. He furthers that he wants public transportation to be the preferred choice for commuter movement, both for work and leisure.
Bringing all the players together is critical to energize the focus and to focus our attention on transforming the transportation landscape for the betterment of everyone. Public transport, as Miguel said, is an integral part of a country's economy. It contributes to industry growth and development, the social fabric of a people, and to the economic well-being of the nation. In other words, public transport is like a blueprint of the society, a master plan of how to accomplish specific or desired results from a program of action. Therefore, we must ensure that our public transport plan and actions include the movement of people, goods, and services from point to point daily.
Part of the vision includes boosting the number of buses in the system.
We also want to see the expansion and more efficient services of the JUTC, and this may lead to expanding routes. But we can't expand routes with 140 or 160 buses with an optimum of between 400 and 500. So I can say that the Minister of Finance would have indicated in his budget presentation that there will be 200 buses that will be ordered in the next financial year.
Minister Vaz says the system should positively impact the natural environment through the reduction of pollution and reduced traffic congestion.
This includes several key elements such as the restoration of passenger rail service connecting the cities of Kingston to large population centers across the immediate outskirts of the city.
The minister was delivering the main address at the Transport Authority's Transportation Conference Center 2023 last week. In this week's Living Healthy report, we look at how to adapt person-centered health services to aging populations.
The world has committed to global goals for sustainable development that are relevant to everyone, everywhere. Part of this promise is that people of all ages get the health and social care they need. But health systems around the world are not yet ready for older populations. Older people often experience more than one health condition at the same time, and these problems tend to be ongoing. Yet, health systems are usually designed to detect and treat individual diseases and conditions. As a result, they tend to manage older people's health issues in fragmented ways, which have negative consequences. For example, older people often struggle with conflicting advice from different health providers. They may be prescribed many drugs that can have negative interactions. They also might pay higher costs for all the different services. Frequently, this fragmentation means that we miss opportunities to manage chronic conditions and prevent people becoming care dependent. But we know how health systems can better meet the needs of older populations. Health systems need to shift from managing each disease or condition separately and take a more holistic and integrated approach focused on building and maintaining older people's physical and mental capacity. The starting point for integrated health services is an assessment of the older person's goals, their capacity, and their physical and social environments. This assessment enables health and social care professionals, together with the older person and their caregivers, to develop a care plan where services are coordinated across different providers and settings and delivered in the older person's home or as near as possible. Ensuring universal access to integrated care will offer quality health services and make better use of existing health resources. Most importantly, older people will not be left behind.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Jamaica has overperformed on indicative targets and met structural benchmarks. This statement comes from the International Monetary Fund after reaching a staff-level agreement with the government on the completion of the first reviews of Jamaica's precautionary and liquidity line and the Resilience and Sustainability Facility. Ahead of that review, the IMF staff praised the progress that has been made so far in implementing the policy agenda. They also praised Jamaica's commitment to macroeconomic stability and strong policy frameworks, which they said continue to allow the country to navigate smoothly the difficult global environment. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Monday, June 19, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.25. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $117.09. The pound sterling traded for $196.96, and the euro sold for an average of $169.38. In JSE trading, the JSE index advanced by 4,887 points. The junior market index declined by 7 points. The combined market index advanced by 4,488 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by 3,886 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 104 stocks, of which 43 advanced, 36 declined, and 25 traded firm. Stocks advanced for AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, Berger Paints Jamaica Limited, and CAC 2000 Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, Blue Power Group Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and Caribbean Producers Jamaica Limited. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 14 million units, Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with over 5 million units, and the Fosrich Company Limited with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, zero securities were traded. Zero securities were traded on the Barbados Stock Exchange. In regional business in Trinidad and Tobago, while artificial intelligence could replace jobs in the near future, a local cybersecurity expert is concerned with the level of complacency and inaccuracy that could arise from the use of such technology. Sunil Lala has more.
It's no secret that the increased use of artificial intelligence, AI, has the ability to make our lives easier. AI platforms such as ChatGPT allows users to have human-like conversations with a chatbot for assistance with tasks such as analyzing and generating reports and emails in minutes. Vice President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Jonathan Cumberbatch, admits that AI technology would make some new jobs irrelevant, but says that's nothing new.
There was once a job that involved someone lighting street lights on a lantern on his horse in Trinidad, in most of the Western world, until the advent of electrical lights came and that position came to no more.
Local cybersecurity expert Glenn Singh says AI technology could not only encourage complacency by employees, but could allow inaccurate data to persist.
AI don't provide us with any sort of citation or references from any journals to say that, hey, it actually got us information from a certain author or a certain research. It simply gives us information, and if you're not too mindful, you'll simply trust it without questioning it to get a second opinion.
And human resource expert Rochelle James says regional companies need to implement policies to regulate the use of AI, alluding to sensitive information being shared.
We at the time did not have any policy in place to govern the kind of prompts she was sharing on that platform. So employee names, company information, proprietary information, all in an effort to create this content.
Mr. Singh notes that there has been some pushback against foreign companies banning the use of ChatGPT for this reason.
But this information is saved on your account and within the AI system. Due to the data breach, hackers was able to actually gain access to what people inserted.
Ms. James believes employees now have to continuously reskill themselves for the new jobs that would be created.
How are we upskilling our employees to support this AI-driven, data-driven world that they're going to be working in now eventually? And let us be mindful that just a couple of years ago, we didn't have social media managers.
But is any industry safe with the introduction of artificial intelligence?
We need the people to actually build our physical infrastructure. We need people to pave our highways, paint the roads, cut the grass. So anything that a computer cannot do, those type of industries will definitely not be replaceable.
Mr. Singh says he believes the existing workforce needs to adapt to the changing landscape to continue to be relevant in the workplace.
In international business, UBS faces hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties over Credit Suisse's mishandling of Archegos capital after UK, Swiss, and US regulators completed their investigations. Here's more.
UBS could pick up a huge bill for Credit Suisse's failings. Britain's Financial Times reported Monday the bank faces hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties. It's over Credit Suisse's mishandling of the collapsed Archegos capital. Britain could impose a fine of around $128 million, while the US could go up to $300 million, according to the paper. Credit Suisse had reportedly set aside just $35 million for potential levies. UBS completed its emergency takeover of its Swiss rival last week. The collapse of Archegos caused billions of dollars in losses for Credit Suisse. The capital management firm fell apart due to its founder's aggressive use of financial instruments meant to boost the effective size of his market positions. UK, Swiss and US regulators have completed their investigations into the matter. The FT said UBS asked regulators from each country to publish their findings and announce penalties jointly at the end of July. A presentation showed UBS set aside $4 billion for potential lawsuits on the Credit Suisse deal in May. The US Federal Reserve declined to comment. UBS and British and Swiss regulators did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
In market data for oil prices rose after China cut benchmark lending rates in a potential boost to growth. Brent crude was up 69 cents at $76.78 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude was down 3 cents at $71.75. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Barbadian Prime Minister Mia Mottley is putting forward a proposal for financial support to connect the Caribbean to Africa via direct air travel and is urging financial institutions like Afrexim Bank and those in the Caribbean to support this mission of connectivity.
The Africa Exim Bank, the Africa Development Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, the CARICOM Development Fund have a duty to work with us all to ensure that whatever is necessary to make both the financial and economic case of connectivity is put in place, because the next major step of cementing this relationship is not about leaders coming and mixing with other leaders, but it is about ordinary people moving in their own time and space to be able to make those friends, to make new family, and to make new business. And it must now also, as it did in the area of the African Medical Supplies Platform, continue where pooled procurement is critical, both to access difficult provisions or equipment where our orders, as I said, are simply too small, and to guarantee better pricing that we cannot do as market takers and not as market shapers. In the case of Barbados, we currently home port cruise ships and take people from the United Kingdom every week in the winter season to cruise the Caribbean. And when you ask those in Africa, why aren't we seeing more people there is the problem of the transit visas in the North Atlantic countries. If we allow the denial of visas to our people in the North Atlantic countries to define how we can trade, then we truly deserve whatever comes to us.
Antigua and Barbuda now has an improved ranking in the Trafficking in Persons report, as the U.S. State Department has moved the Twin Island state from the Tier 2 watch list and placed it in Tier 2. Director of the Trafficking in Persons Prevention Unit in the Public Safety Ministry, John McKinnon, says he and his team are excited with the improved ranking, but says the work continues to get the country to Tier 1 status.
We're definitely not in a bad place. We slipped a little bit last year to Tier 2 watch list. We made a strong comeback this year by putting in the effort. And what we do need to do is to just continue. Based on the recommendation, it asks us to, continue trying to reduce the delays in the court in terms of prosecutions, continue to provide the training that we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of training with frontline officials, including immigration, customs, police, ONDCP, and even some private sector partners, in terms of having as many eyes as possible on the ground who are aware of what human trafficking looks like and how to report it. And prevention is a major part of our ambit. We do believe that an ounce of prevention is worth much more than a pound of cure. So we'd prefer not to have trafficking. However, we are putting in the mechanisms in place and strengthening the systems to ensure when we do come across cases, we can manage them appropriately.
In other news from Antigua, Tropical Storm Brett is turning toward the northeastern Caribbean, with forecasters urging all in the Leeward Islands to be on the alert. It is forecast to become a hurricane by later this week before impacting the eastern Caribbean archipelago.
The models are very mixed at this time. If you could take a look at the graphic, this graphic shows you a wide range of what they call uncertainties in the models. It is not a very close-knit model. It is very widespread, which means that the uncertainty in the movement or the place it should be in the next couple of days is very uncertain at this time, Garfield.
When can we expect to get a little bit more clarity there, Cecil?
Well, I would say in the next 2 days or so, that when it gets closer, the model would probably have a better fix on it, and we would see it, we would definitely know exactly where it would be going or where it should be going.
Apart from the model, Cecil, in terms of where it is going, the forecast track, what about the intensity? So whenever it is in this area, in the northeastern Caribbean,
yes,
what strength is it likely to be? Is it likely to be a hurricane at that point?
It is forecast to be a hurricane at that time, because the environmental conditions are expected to become better, and it is expected to improve and in conditions, and thus intensification of the storm.
In international news, Chinese Premier Li Jing is leading a delegation to Germany meant to increase and boost economic ties. The talks between Li and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will be joined by ministers from both countries. More from Al Jazeera.
Well, the Chinese Premier was just welcomed with military honors here at the Chancellery in Berlin. And now the two leaders, Olaf Scholz, German Chancellor, and Li Qiang, will have these bilateral talks before going into the 7th consultative meeting. It's the first time in 3 years that both delegations are meeting here. And it's an interesting fact that Germany actually asked the Chinese not to bring the usual large delegation of ministers, of 20 ministers. So they basically have slimmed down this a little bit. And this also shows how Germany actually has been struggling with its relationship with its largest trading partner, China, especially the German companies, the car makers are very keen on continuing their business, of course, in China. They're keen to get into this electric market. To give you one example, Volkswagen, one of the largest car makers, has 38% of its cars is sold in China. So it's a balancing act. That's been described, the meeting today. So there will be a lot on the agenda, as you said, climate change, the role China can play in combating climate change. That's one of the items that Scholz definitely wants to talk about.
Yeah, and Scholz has spoken about de-risking from China. What does he mean by that, and will this be one of the topics of discussion?
Well, that's interesting. After the U.S. came up with the decoupling from China, Scholz said, no, we don't want decoupling, we want de-risking. And that's also something the G7 leaders have adopted. And what it means exactly, we don't know at this stage. Does it mean that critical infrastructure can't be allowed into Germany anymore? I mean, Chinese investment in critical infrastructure, like what happened, for example, with the Hamburg port. Just a few months ago, China bought a big stake in the Hamburg port, and that was heavily criticized. Of course, Germany has this experience of being too dependent on Russia. At least that's what Germany experienced after the invasion in Ukraine. So now they don't want to make the same mistake again. But the stakes in China are a lot higher as the stakes were in Russia. So that's going to be a very complicated issue. And I'm not sure if Scholz is going to even mention the word de-risking today.
In sports, the ICC World Cup qualifiers bowled off on Sunday. West Indies opened their campaign with a comfortable 39-run victory over the United States, but were forced to rally following a stumbling start in bowler-friendly conditions at the Takashinga Sports Club, recovering from 14 for 2 in the 6th over to reach 297 all out in the final over. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thanks for watching.